Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. I'm with composer, producer Mark Govenor. And this is our third segment of this interview, and this time, this is what I'm calling My Dinner with Andre. I'm not sure who here is Andre Gregory or who's Wallace Shawn or...
My Dinner with Mark, and we're both Marks.
Yeah, and like, I like to see Louis Malle is out there somewhere with directing. But I asked Mark if he would indulge me. I'm going to, because we're both involved with this idea of kind of this strange theatrical immersive art project. I guess immersive art is a good a name as any. Mm-hmm. So over the last few years, my focus has been I started painting and found painting to be the most euphoric, fun, exciting, creative experience I've ever had, because writing is such a constipated situation. Everything comes through your brain. You have to think. You have it's just you don't bliss out writing. You have to be strapped to the chair. But
it's like The Shining.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all Jack's a dull boy. Yeah, all working hard, no play, which is much how I write. But so I thought of the idea of storytelling through the prism of art. So what I do is I'll paint first, and I'll have the characters, and I'll have the conversation, and it allows me to work from the unconscious, to be much more unguarded, much less self-censoring, and then I'll work. I'll work on cardboard. I'll work on a lot of rough images, or a lot of rough materials, and I'll juxtapose, and I'll put things together. And I'll have all these, pieces of cardboard. I've put this message and this quote and whatever, and I'll cut things out and I'll spread them around, and then something, by the process of juxtaposition, something will happen. I had a mentor by the name of Myron McClellan, who lives in Colorado. Myron was both a composer, a very good pianist, and a spiritualist. But his teacher at Wesleyan was John Cage. Oh. So Cage made a huge impression on him. Mm-hmm. And thus Myron, Cage passed down Cagean thought to me, which is a lot of random chance, a lot of wabi-sabi. You're not going for perfection, and you're going for never the same result. You're very stringent on setting up your, how you, in other words, your experiment, your art experiment. You have very set ways of setting it up. They could be crazy, but you stick to a format, and then you let the randomness fall into it. So I received this strange thing in the mail. When I had a uncle who was kind of the odd duck in the family. He was a guy that never married, was curmudgeonous, was pessimistic, never married, was a hoarder, hang out with guys in the at the dog track, was the epitome of the Tom Waits song, "What's He Building in There?"
Okay.
It's not a swing set for the kids. He was that guy. And so he had Alzheimer's, and my sister took care of him. They put him into a closed unit Alzheimer's, I guess, institution or whatever it's called. And somehow he escaped or wandered off, and he wandered into this bleak landscape in the snow in the high desert of Colorado.
Wow.
And the hunters found his body months later. Now, and again, the place takes no responsibility for it, and my sister can't, whatever, But so thinking about this uncle, I said, I remember when I was 5 or 6 years old, he wrote a story. And I could remember the typewriter he wrote it on. I can remember the smell of the paper. I could remember how guarded he was. I remember the drawer he hid it in. I remembered his kind of excitement about writing it. And maybe there was something about writing that attracted me, because we share the DNA, and his was kind of a part of the DNA that kind of went wrong, that always spooked me, because that's in me too. And so when he died, I told my sister, I said, do you remember that story? And she didn't remember. My uncle didn't remember. And then she's going through his things, and here it is. And she found it. He kept this weird story that you can hardly. I had to transcribe it because you couldn't read it. And
with the running ink
it's kind of, it smells like I remember it, and it's just a creepy kind of thing. Northern desert, cold, bleak. Men and machines built the city of Chagaf in a single day. And it's this futuristic thing where basically the robots take over, and the people are colonized, and they're basically food. And it's this just weird, bleak environment. And so I go, wow.
When was this written about, approximately?
It's probably late 1950s sci-fi.
Oh, okay, so it's got that.
He's a 17, and it's very kind of prophetic, but the mood is so perfect. And again, why the surreal object is so great is I'd never think it. It's a way out of me. And it's also this great vehicle. So as I invent the city of Shag-F, I imagine it's all plastic molding that's substandard, so it cracks. And then I imagine they have these kind of very happy kids scenes on there, with the bright colored plastic, so it's cold and miserable and dead. But they've got the bright plastic with the colors and everything. And then I had a dream that I was the inventor. Before the nail gun, I was the inventor of the hammerless nail. Okay. So this came in a dream. So what is the hammerless nail? Well, I thought, well, that's kind of a cool thing. It just, does itself. Then I realized in Shag-F what the hammerless nail is the guy behind you. They have the nail in the wall. The guy behind you pushes you into it, and it's lobotomizing. So it was like this dark, and this was shocking to me. Again, I don't think this stuff. I go, it kind of, that's what that was.
Whoa.
And then, okay, so that's a weird dream, and that was a weird understanding of Shag-F. And then there's this rebellion going on, and later, what had happened? There's this thing called Mindovac. Then the computers start evolving. The computers make this leap, and they are funny. And so I thought, okay, that's kind of great. So I've got this city of Chag-F. Then I had another dream. I'm in a far past. So the landscape is very Kings 2, dark, biblical. Kings 2 is where the dogs are licking the blood of Jezebel. It's probably the darkest part of the Bible, which seems perfectly fitting also for this moment. So, and I have these dreams every once in a while. It's very like Fez, Marrakesh, Old Jerusalem. I'm in these very old Medinas, and so I dream that I meet a beggar, and the beggar's got these two donkeys, but they're headless. So they're like these ostriches, and with no heads. I'm in the dream. I'm wondering where their thoughts go, and then the beggar rushes at me and he grabs at my hand. And he's pulling on my rings, and I push the beggar away, and then he pushes him out. And then later in the dream, I'm around a spice merchant, and then the beggar, appears again, and he says, "I should kill myself," and he's grabbing on my arm, and I push him away again, and I'm showing the beggar no compassion.
Right.
So I wake up the next morning, and I look at my ring, and the bevel's broken. So the beggar was telling me, "Fix your ring." The beggar was an angel. And so the question is, how do you recognize the angel? So then I did this. Okay, so this is in the dream life. Then in the waking life, where the same imagery goes on. So I did this thing at a couple months ago at the Dali Museum, and I have all these people in, and it's this kind of nice art event. And there's this kid that wanders in from the wharf, and I don't know if he's drunk or stoned or homeless, but you know, he's like one of those kids on the wharf. There's so many of them. And he was muttering about Banksy. Oh, you know about Banksy, Banksy is always worthy of merit.
Right.
You know, so that was this poor disturbed kid, and all I'm thinking is, okay, it's fine if it's fine if he has some cake, it's fine if he does this, but God, I hope he goes out. That was my response. It wasn't compassion, it wasn't, and so he wandered off, and I was perfectly happy. And then I'm thinking back home, what if that was the angel? And that was really disturbing to me. And then we had this. I believe I had this with you about Peter Sellars.
Yes, we talked about.
So Peter Sellars is a theater director from Los Angeles, and he said something famously years ago. When I look at a text, I look for everything extraneous, unimportant, everything that can be cut, everything that should be ignored, and I base my entire production around that. and so. The kind of what I'm looking at is, how do we recognize the angel? What does that demand of us if we do? Because that means consciousness of a problem. We have to ask. We have to act. And if we have to act, do we want to act? Do we want to be better? It's not that we don't know better. Do we have the energy just to be better and do this? So these are the kind of elements that I want to kind of work with. And so as I write these texts, I write very densely, again, because I write very densely and very circularly and very cubistically, so that I can have spoken word in a public place, and somebody can watch for 2 or 3 minutes and take something away. They don't have to watch, how many hours and hours and hours or whatever I'm doing.
Right.
It's more as immersive. And then my job as an artist, especially in a museum situation, would be to have someone walk in totally confused, and then be in my world and somehow take them through the looking glass so it starts making more and more sense. But as I go on, I want to create the live event in any museum setting or a theatrical setting. So Chag F, I'm really imagining, putting this kind of old world, world of the darkest parts of the Bible, and this eerie, futuristic world of the future, which I just see as kind of all the parts have slowed down and you can't get the right parts, and everything is just worse materials and everything more inefficiency, and just kind of just the slow decay. I don't see the future as being very futuristic. I see the future as being very kind of run down and things fall apart. And so I'm imagining these elements in a kind of a small, we talked about kind of Edinburgh kind of way.
You can do a courtyard, you can do, the great thing about the Edinburgh Festival is if you find a venue, you can do something, and there's some pretty cool venues for alternative. There's theaters, but then there's a castle there, there's a courtyard, there's a bridge. And so it sounds like it'd be very conducive.
So what you said, which was so interesting about with Dusk, for instance, what you want to do, what you learned in Edinburgh, is you don't want to bring you don't want to bring your cast and crew. Right. You want to shop. You want to do it locally.
Right. The more the practicality of putting up, a dozen people, say in a. In a place like that is that's really how a lot of productions don't make it. But yeah, if you can have something where you incorporate the locals, and even better, incorporate maybe some of their history and what they're.
So you want to make it so it has this flexibility to be fresh, to be local people want to see themselves.
Yes.
So it allows you as the artist to go into a venue and meet new people, meet the artists, and kind of continue the art conversation is the art conversation the worldwide, and again that allows you, by not having total control of what you do, it allows for surprise and serendipity. Those are key elements to me.
Yeah. Yes. I also like the element for you, the idea that, almost every post-apocalyptic thing, the robots are these very serious, austere, logic-driven creatures. And I kind of agree with you. At some point, they'd have a sense of humor, and I think at some point they'd be slackers, and that's how you have this sort of things don't work quite right in the degraded material.
So they have the bar, the hammerless nail. So the hammerless nail troop down, they all hang out at the hammerless nail. Those are the kind of the last people who aren't totally anesthetized are kind of in this room. It's with.
And how great, in Edinburgh, where there's actual castles and actual alleys with ghosts in them and all that, you could definitely put up a sign.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Nail.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
So this is, we're kind of, I don't know if this is kind of been tradition that I don't know about so much, but this immersive thing and this flexibility thing, it works with the economics, but it's so good with the creativity. Just as the, going back to, I'm like so Roger Corman-y, I do love that where it's everything's not so precious,
right?
The lack of preciousness, the lack of you're making a movie, you're not saving the world.
And there was necessity because your budget is constrained, right? Like the thing that I would love is, he would have a medieval set, say, because they had just done some medieval thing, and then he'd walk around to all the writers and say, who can come up with, we got this set. You could get a comedy, you could get, a tragedy, you could redo historical fiction. And I feel like, that is the seeds of this, what you're talking about, immersion. Like, what if, imagine at night the studio's closed, it was Hammond Lumberyard, probably easy to break into.
Yeah.
Imagine if people came in and were doing this at night, no one knew on these sets.
It's so cool. And then I'm going over, but I just wanted to just share with you that we both were talking about Blade Runner before the new Blade Runner came on. And how about the holograms of Frank Sinatra and the holograms of Elvis?
So perfect.
Isn't that clever?
Yeah.
Again, the bar is high, and it's just imagination. Anyway, pleasure. Thank you for indulging me. You're watching the YourTown television program. I'm Mark Baer. My guest has been Mark Govenor. That's the word. We're out. Bye.